Hare Krishna, welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Before we start our Srimad Bhagavatam class, let's do a simple Mangala Charana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chayam Narottamam Deving Saraswating Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the only means of conquest, let us offer our respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, onto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, onto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and onto Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam. Nasta Presha Avdareshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistikihi. By regularly attending Srimad Bhagavatam class and by rendering service onto the lotus feet of pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely vanquished, and loving devotional service onto the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs and choice poetry, is established in one's heart as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jnana Salakaya Chaksuramaratyana Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master illuminated my heart with the torch of transcendental knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Nama Om Vishubhadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimite Japataka Swami Iti Namine Nama Acharyapadaya Nitai Kripapadayane Gorakajadamdai Nirgram Tadi. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, welcome again everybody to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 25, chapter entitled The Three Modes of Nature and Beyond. So this chapter is the continuation of the conversation between Lord Krishna and Uddhava, in which Krishna has already established that the path of liberation, a path of self-realization, starts with the idea that we should give up the idea that we are the enjoyers, and we should keep sense gratification far away as far as possible from our lives. But Uddhava asked this question. He says, how is it possible that we can do this? Because people in this day and age, they are addicted to sense gratification. In this, Krishna gave a story about the Avanti Brahmana, whereby he says that all that is perceived in this world is perceived through the medium of the mind. And in this chapter, Krishna is going to explain how not only the mind, but the mind is the source of the activation of the three modes of material nature. So these three modes of material nature is a very, very interesting topic. Even in Bhagavad Gita, there's a whole chapter just on the three modes of material nature in Bhagavad Gita. That is chapter 14. For those who have read Bhagavad Gita who are not practicing devotees, they find chapter 14 the most interesting chapter. And if one reads this chapter, you will understand why. And it's also a very good preliminary chapter to read in Bhagavad Gita before reading this chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Three Modes of Nature and Beyond. In this chapter, Krishna will systematically explain the nature of these three modes. Three modes here meaning the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. And Krishna will explain it in terms of its pure nature, number one, and then he will explain in terms of how these natures manifest in a person who is aspiring devotee. Okay, and then of course Krishna will give great detail in explaining how these three modes permeates every single thing in our lives. What in terms of the place that we practice such method of realization, the results of activities, along with time, along with knowledge, then underlying the actions, the activity itself, the performer, faith, level of awareness, spiritual progress, the destination of one after death, all partaking in these three modes of material nature. So it's a most interesting and deep topic, and also more importantly, Krishna will explain the steps required for one to overcome these these modes of material nature. So let's begin the chapter with text number 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O best among men, please listen as I describe to you how the living entity attains a particular nature by association with individual material modes." So this Krishna here is starting with explaining how each of these three modes, gunas, passion and ignorance, act separately, causing a conditioned soul to manifest a particular type of existence. The living entity is ultimately transcendental in its original form to the three modes, being part and parcel of Lord Krishna, but in a conditioned life. Condition means in this material world, having a material body, he manifests material qualities. So these qualities are the expressions of these three modes. So I like to say here that in Sanskrit the word rope, is used is guna. So this guna, this rope, ties us into this material world. So to be free from this material world, in other words, to get liberation, one must be free from these three modes of material nature. Let's continue. Text number 2 to number 5. Mind and sense control, tolerance, discrimination, sticking to one's prescribed duty, truthfulness, mercy, careful study of the past and future, satisfaction in any condition, generosity, renunciation of sense gratification, faith in the spiritual master, being embarrassed at improper action, charity, simplicity, humbleness, and satisfaction within oneself are qualities of the mode of goodness. So, what is the qualities in the mode of passion? Listen carefully. Material desire, great endeavor, audacity, dissatisfaction even in gain, false pride, praying for material advancement, considering oneself different and better than others, sense gratification, a rash eagerness to fight, a fondness for hearing oneself praised, the tendency to ridicule others, advertising one's own prowess and justifying one's action by one's strength are qualities in the mode of passion. So what is the qualities in the mode of ignorance? Listen carefully. Intolerant anger, stinginess, speaking without scriptural authority, violent hatred, living as a parasite, hypocrisy, chronic fatigue, quarrel, lamentation, delusion, unhappiness, depression, sleeping too much, false expectation, fear and laziness constitute the major qualities of the mode of ignorance. Now please hear about the combination of these three modes. So what you have just heard is the qualities of these modes in its pure state. But the reality is these qualities actually don't appear in its pure state. These qualities, this mode of material nature, they're constantly fighting with one another for our attention and our time and energy. So Krishna now is going to explain about the combination of these three modes. Text number 6. My dear Uddhava, the combination of all three modes is present in the mentality of I and mind. The ordinary transaction of this world, which are carried out through the agency of the mind, the objects of perception, the sense, the vital air of the physical body, are also based on the combination of the modes. So here the illusory concept of I and mind occurs by the mixture of the three modes of nature. A person in goodness may feel I am peaceful. One in passion may think I am lusty, and one in ignorance may think I am angry. Similarly, one may think my space, my lust and my anger. One completely absorbed in the mentality of being peaceful could not work in the material world. He would lack any impulse to perform activity. Similarly, one absorbed in lust would be blinded without at least a tinge of peacefulness or restraint. One overwhelmed with anger could not function properly in the material world without the mixture of other qualities. Thus, we find that a material mode does not occur in a pure, isolated form, but rather is mixed with other modes, thereby making possible normal functioning within this world. Ultimately, one should think, I am an eternal servant of Krishna, and my only possession is loving service to Krishna. This is the pure state of consciousness beyond the material mode of nature. And in chapter 2, text 45 in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna the same thing. He tells him, Traigunya Visaya Veda Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. Krishna tells Arjuna that the Vedas mainly deal with these three modes of material nature. But Krishna's advice to Arjuna is go beyond these three modes. Don't hang around these three modes. These three modes are not beneficial for us ultimately. Text number 7. When a person devotes himself to religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification, the faith, wealth, and sensual enjoyment obtained by his endeavor displays the interaction of these three modes of nature. So, religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification are situated within the modes of nature, and the faith, wealth, and enjoyment obtained by them clearly reveals the particular situation of a person within that mode of nature. Krishna will further elaborate on this. Text number 8. When a man desires sense gratification, being attached to family life, and when he consequently becomes established in religious and occupational duties, the combination of the mode of nature is manifested. So here Krishna is explaining that religious duties performed for promotion to heaven are understood to be in a mode of passion. Those performed to enjoy ordinary family life are in the mode of ignorance, and those performed selflessly to fulfill one's occupational duty in the Varnashrama system are in the mode of goodness. Krishna has explained how mundane religiosity is manifested within the mode of nature. Text number 9. A person exhibiting qualities such as self-control is understood to be predominantly in a mode of goodness. Similarly, a passionate person is recognized by his lust, and one in ignorance is recognized by the qualities such as anger. Text number 10. Any person, whether man or woman, who worships me with loving devotion, offering his or her prescribed duties onto me without material attachment, is understood to be situated in goodness. Text number 11. When a person worships me by his prescribed duties with the hope of gaining material benefit, his nature should be understood to be in passion, and one who worships me with the desire to commit violence against others is in ignorance. Text number 12. The three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, influence the living entity, but not me. Manifesting within his mind, they induce the living entity to become attached to material bodies and other created objects. In this way, the living entity is bound up. So here the living entity is understood to be the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord. Why marginal potency? This marginal potency means this living entity has a tendency to be overwhelmed by the Supreme Lord's illusory material energy. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, however, is absolutely the absolute controller of illusion. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is not under illusion, but he is the supreme controller of illusion. Illusion can never control the Supreme Lord. Thus, the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna is the eternal object of service for all living beings who are eternal servants of the Lord. The three modes of material nature manifest within the material energy. When a conditioned soul adopts a material mentality, the mode exerts their influence within the jurisdiction of that mentality. But if one purifies one's mind in devotional service of the Lord, the mode of nature can no longer act upon him, since they have no influence on the spiritual platform. So now Krishna is giving an indication here in the purport of this verse that these modes of material nature has no effect on one who has dedicated his thoughts, his words and his actions for the pleasure of Krishna. Once you involve Krishna in anything that you offer to Krishna, that thing that you offer becomes spiritualized. It becomes on a different platform. In that platform, the modes of material nature does not work upon you. So the shackles that bind you into repeated birth and death in this world is broken. Text number 13. When the mode of goodness, which is luminous, pure and auspicious, predominates over passion and ignorance, a man becomes endowed with happiness, virtue, knowledge and other good qualities. So one can control one's mind and senses in the mode of goodness. If you are not in the mode of goodness, if you try to control your mind and senses in the mode of passion and ignorance, it is like climbing 1 million Mount Everest. It is virtually impossible. Only in the mode of goodness you have a very, very good chance of overcoming all these obstacles of liberation in your life. Text number 14. When the mode of passion, which causes attachment, separatism and activity, conquers ignorance and goodness, a man begins to work hard to acquire prestige and fortune. Thus, in the mode of passion, he experiences anxiety and struggle. So this is the main characteristic of somebody in the mode of passion. He is constantly in anxiety and struggle. Why? Because he is constantly thinking how to get more and more and more and more. Text number 15. When the mode of ignorance conquers passion and goodness, it covers one's consciousness and makes one foolish and dull. Falling into lamentation and illusion, a person in the mode of ignorance sleeps excessively, indulging in false hope and displays violence towards others. So the main characteristic of one in the mode of ignorance, when it's more powerful than his mode of passion and goodness, is that one becomes very dull-headed, no intelligence. He becomes very unperceptive. That's number one. And then he becomes lazy and got tendency for violence. At the drop of a pin, he'll get involved in some kind of fight. Text number 16. When consciousness becomes clear and the senses are detached from matter, one experiences fearlessness within the material body and detachment from the material mind. You should understand this situation to be the predominance of the mode of goodness in which one has the opportunity to realize me. So now Krishna is explaining even further more about mode of goodness, why we should strive to acquire this mode of goodness. First of all, one becomes clear in consciousness and he develops a detachment from matter, and the result of that is one becomes fearless within the material body and detached from the material mind. Very, very desirable qualities actually, this one. Text number 17. You should identify the mode of passion by its symptoms. The distortion of the intelligence because of too much activity, the inability of the perceiving senses to disentangle themselves from mundane objects, an unhealthy condition of working physical organs, and the unsteady perplexities of the mind. So here Krishna is describing about the symptoms of the mode of passion. The first thing is once intelligence becomes distorted, it cannot think properly when there's too much activity, and they have difficulty letting go, making their mind relax. They are too much, their mind don't allow them to even sleep. I'm reminded of Michael Jackson, no? He had to take very, very powerful medication simply just to get a few hours of good sleep. So this is a symptom of somebody in a mode of passion, too much indulging in too much activity. And of course, these people all they end up dying from taking all this medication just to sleep, simply because their organs cannot take such an abuse. So such people, they work so hard, they suffer stroke, and all their money goes to doctors, lawyers, and divorce. That is the sad fact. Text number 18. When one's higher awareness fails and finally disappears, and one is thus unable to concentrate his attention, his mind is ruined and manifests ignorance and depression. You should understand this situation to be the predominance of the mode of ignorance. This verse here reminds me of a lot of people in this day and age. Many of them are clinically insane. Krishna here uses the word ignorance and depression. I have seen people who have become totally mad because of this mode of ignorance. Under the mode of ignorance, they have totally become mad. Text number 19. With the increase of the mode of goodness, the strength of the demigods similarly increase. When the passion increases, the demoniac becomes strong. And with the rise of ignorance, O Uddhava, the strength of the most wicked increase. So here is a very interesting verse. Krishna is describing that whatever we do actually empower other beings. So if you want favor from the powerful demigods, then we should always think of how to cultivate mode of goodness. Because he says here, if you are in the mode of goodness, that strengthens the demigods. And among all the species of powerful beings in this material world, we know that demigods, they are favorable to those in the mode of goodness. They will help those in the mode of goodness. And then when whoever is in a mode of passion, their mode empowers those who are demoniac. And we can also see that here in this world, those who are demoniac, they influence those who are mainly in the mode of passion. Whenever they open their mouth and they say something, this demoniac, they know what to say, what words to say, how to say them to affect those especially in the mode of passion. He trigger them. They know how to push their weakness button. And then of course those in the mode of ignorance, they strengthen those who are wicked. All those who are wicked minded, they are attracted to those in the mode of ignorance. That's just a fact of life. We can see it around us. Text number 20. It should be understood that alert wakefulness come from the mode of goodness, sleep with dreaming from the mode of passion, and deep dreamless sleep from the mode of ignorance. The fourth state of consciousness pervades these three and is transcendental. So now Krishna is describing for the first time about the transcendental mode. So this verse here is very important in the sense that Krishna now is indicating to us the original constitutional position of the living entity. The living entity by nature is pure. This living entity actually got nothing to do in this material world. The living entity is Satchit Ananda. The living entity is eternal. He is full of knowledge and always blissful. But unfortunately, this material world we're living in is of the opposite nature of this eternal spirit soul. This material world is temporary, it is full of ignorance and is miserable. So even though this living entity is in this miserable material world, the nature of this spirit soul is not affected. In whatever state the living entity is in, whether embodied in this material world as a man or a woman or an animal or any of the 8,400,000 species of life, the eternal nature of the spirit soul does not diminish. But the nature of this material world, these three modes of material nature, they fluctuate up and down. They fluctuate up and down. They are constantly changing. So this is actually very encouraging for all of us. Why? Because all of us by nature, we are liberated in our original state. For now only, because of our engagement in this material body, we are struggling with our mind and our desires to enjoy. So therefore, Krishna gave Uddhava the advice earlier in the story of the Avanti Brahmana that one should realize that one has got nothing to do with the material mind, with the material intelligence, with the false ego, with the three modes of material nature. Actually, we have got nothing to do. We are transcendental beings who are trapped in a temporary material body. So that is a most essential point for us to understand. Text number 21. Learned persons dedicated to Vedic culture are elevated by the modes of goodness to higher and higher positions. The mode of ignorance, on the other hand, forces one to fall headfirst into lower and lower births, and by the mode of passion, one continues transmigrating through human bodies. So here, Sudras, Sudras are those who are the fourth class. Persons in a mode of ignorance are generally in deep illusion about the purpose of life, accepting the gross material body as the self. Those in passion and ignorance are called Vaishyas and hanker intensely for wealth, whereas Kshatriyas, who are in the mode of passion, are eager for prestige and power. Those in the mode of goodness, however, hanker after perfect knowledge. They are therefore called Brahmanas. They are after Brahman. Such a person is promoted up to a supreme material position of Brahma Loka, the planet of Lord Brahma. One who is in a mode of ignorance gradually falls to the level of unmoving species, such as trees and stones, while one in a mode of passion, filled with material desires, but satisfying it within Vedic culture, is allowed to remain in human society. So very interesting here. Krishna is giving here very vivid description of what happens when one leaves his material body in a certain mode. Those who are after transcendental knowledge, Param Satyam, they're looking for absolute truth. They are in the category of those who are known as Brahmanas. Brahmanas means the one who is situated in Brahman. So such great souls, they go to the higher planetary systems like Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka and Satyaloka. Satyaloka here is the abode of Lord Brahma. So he mentions, Krishna here mentions about the abode of Lord Brahma. In association of great saintly personalities that are in Satyaloka, one make very, very quick advancement and get liberation from this material world. And then for those who are in ignorance, totally in the deepest, darkest state of ignorance, they will manifest, they can fall down into the species of life like trees and stones, lifeless, motionless, which is actually a very great torture. While one in a mode of passion, but who has some reverence and some respect for the Vedic literatures. This is very important. Only those who have some reverence and some respect for Vedic literatures, which means actually their path of liberation started but not complete, not perfect yet. Only these people get to come back as human beings. For those who are, in a mode of passion, but they are totally ignorant about Vedic knowledge and the absolute truth about Krishna, they run the risk of being born in a demoniac family. Text number 22. Those who leave this world in a mode of goodness go to the heavenly planets. Those who pass away in the mode of passion remain in the world of human beings, and those dying in the mode of ignorance must go to hell. But those who are freed from the influence of all modes of nature come to me. So Krishna here makes it very clear. You want Krishna, you think of Krishna, you will come to Krishna. Text number 23. Work performed as an offering to me without consideration of fruits is considered to be in a mode of goodness. Work performed with a desire to enjoy the results is in the mode of passion, and work impelled by violence and envy is in the mode of ignorance. So there's a very famous verse by Rupa Goswami. It says, Anya vilasita sunyam jnana karma anarvitam anakulena krishnano silana bhakti ruttamam. So this verse says that Uttama Bhakti comes when one is free from desire, free from any sense of gratifying his senses, number one. Anya Vilasita Sunyam Jnana. Jnana means no impersonal understanding, no funny business, no knowledge that is not authorized. Anya Vilasita Sunyam Jnana Karma Anarvitam. No desire to perform activities that are fruitive in nature. And one perform activities that are favorable for Krishna's pleasure, like chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, or hearing his glories, or serving the lotus feet of his pure devotees, then one is performing Uttama Bhakti, the topmost Bhakti. Text number 24. Absolute knowledge in the mode of goodness, knowledge based on duality, is in the mode of passion. And foolish materialistic knowledge is in the mode of ignorance. Knowledge based upon me, however, is understood to be transcendental. So here Krishna clearly explains that spiritual knowledge of the Supreme Personality is transcendental to ordinary religious knowledge in the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, one understands the existence of higher spiritual nature within all things. In the mode of passion, one acquires scientific knowledge of the material body, and in the mode of ignorance, one fixes one's mind on the sense object without higher awareness, perceiving things as a small child or a retarded person does. The material modes of goodness does not award perfect knowledge of the absolute truth. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it says that providing that many great demigods in the mode of goodness could not understand the transcendental personality of Lord Krishna. So this is actually proof. We can see that even the demigods, they have difficulty understanding who is Lord Krishna. Demigods generally are in the mode of goodness. In the material mode of goodness, one becomes pious or religious, aware of higher and spiritual nature. On the spiritual platform of purified goodness, however, one establishes a direct, loving relationship with the absolute truth and renders service to the Lord rather than merely maintaining a connection to mundane piety. In the mode of passion, the conditioned soul speculates about the reality of his own existence and of the world around him, and considers speculatively the existence of the kingdom of God. In the mode of ignorance, one acquires knowledge for sense gratification, absorbing the mind in varieties of eating, sleeping, defending, and sex without any higher purpose. Thus, within the mode of nature, the conditioned souls are trying to gratify their senses, or else they are trying to free themselves from sense gratification. But they cannot directly engage themselves in their constitutional liberated activity until they come to the transcendental position of Krishna consciousness beyond the mode of nature. Text number 25. Residence in the forest is in the mode of goodness. Residence in town is in the mode of passion. Residence in a gambling house displays the quality of ignorance, and residence in a place where I reside is transcendental. So many creatures in the forest, such as the trees, wild boars, and insects, are actually in the mode of passion and ignorance. But residence in the forest is designated as being in the mode of goodness because there one may live a solitary life free from sinful activities, material opulence, and passionate ambition. Throughout history of India, many millions of persons from all walks of life have adopted the order of Vanaprastha and Sannyasa and have gone to sacred forests to practice austerity and perfect their self-realization. Even in America and other Western countries, persons such as Henry David Thoreau achieved fame by retiring to the forest to reduce the scope and opulence of material involvement. Family life is certainly full of false pride, false hope, false affection, lamentation, and illusion. Since the family connection is squarely resting on the bodily concept of life, the very opposite of self-realization. Gambling house refer to pool hall, racetracks, poker clubs, bars and other sinful places that maintain an abysmal level of consciousness in the mode of ignorance. Lord's own abode in the spiritual world, as well as the Lord's temple within this world, wherein the deity form of the Lord is appropriately worshipped. One who lives in the temple of Lord Krishna, following the rules and regulation of temple life, is understood to be residing in a transcendental platform. In this verse, the Lord clearly explains that all material phenomena may be divided into three divisions according to the mode of nature, and then ultimately there is the fourth or transcendental division, Krishna consciousness, which elevates all aspects of human culture to the liberated platform. Text number 26. A worker free of attachment is in the mode of goodness. A worker blinded by personal desire is in the mode of passion. And a worker who has completely forgotten how to tell right from wrong is in the mode of ignorance. But a worker who has taken shelter of me is understood to be transcendental to the mode of nature. So a transcendental worker performs his activity in strict accordance with the directions of Lord Krishna and Lord's bona fide representative. Taking shelter of the Lord's guidance, such a worker remains transcendental to the material modes of nature. Text number 27. Faith directed towards spiritual life is in the mode of goodness. Faith rooted in fruitive work is in the mode of passion. Faith residing in irreligious activities is in the mode of ignorance. But faith in my devotional service is purely transcendental. Text number 28. Food that is wholesome, pure, and obtained without difficulty is in the mode of goodness. Food that gives immediate pleasure to the senses is in the mode of passion. And food that is unclean and causes distress is in the mode of ignorance. So I know many people in the place where I live in, they will go through many obstacles to acquire some tasty food from a very far off place. These are people who are operating in a mode of passion and ignorance. Sometimes they eat some very foul, terrible food simply to taste, and they say, oh, this is very satisfying. Why? Because they put so much effort into acquiring such food. But at the same time also, I've eaten food in a mode of goodness. The thing about the food in a mode of goodness is that it gives you enthusiasm. It makes you very enthusiastic. You feel very nice. Text number 29. Happiness derived from the self is in the mode of goodness. Happiness based on sense gratification is in the mode of passion. And happiness based on delusion and degradation is in the mode of ignorance. But that happiness found within me is transcendental. Text number 30. Therefore, material substance, place, results of activity, time, knowledge, work, the performer of work, faith, state of consciousness, species of life, and destination after death are all based on the three modes of material nature. So that's why Krishna has explained all of these effects of these modes on all these aspects here. The material substance, place, results of activity, time, knowledge, and so forth. Text number 31. O best of human beings, all states of material beings are related to the interactions of the enjoying soul and material nature. Whether seen, heard of, or only conceived within the mind, they are without exception constituted of the mode of nature. So Krishna is saying here that whether you experience this world by within your mind or by seeing or hearing about it, it is all due to influence of the mode of nature. Text number 32. O gentle Uddhava, all these different phases of conditioned life arise from work born of the mode of material nature. The living entity who conquers these three modes, manifested from the mind, can dedicate himself to me by the process of devotional service and thus attains pure love for me. So actually liberation is the residence within the eternal kingdom of God. That is actually the original constitutional position of the living entity, the jiva, the spirit soul, where life is full of bliss and knowledge. The conditioned soul who falsely imagines himself to be the enjoyer of the modes of nature, and thus a particular type of material work is generated. The reaction of this binds the conditioned soul to repeated birth and death. This fruitless process can be counteracted by loving service to the Lord, and this loving service is joyfully performed. Is the only thing in this world that actually is joyfully performed when you even start doing it. And more importantly, it is everlasting, it is eternal. Everything in this material world is temporary in nature, but the only thing that is eternal is loving devotional service, which is the constitutional right of the living entity. Text number 33. Therefore, having achieved this human form of life, which is very, very rare, which allows one to develop full knowledge, those who are intelligent should free themselves from all contamination of the mode of nature and engage exclusively in the loving service of Lord Krishna. Text number 34. A wise sage, free from all material associations and unbewildered, should subdue his senses and worship me. He should conquer the mode of passion and ignorance by engaging himself only within in the mode of goodness. Text number 35. Then, being fixed in devotional service, the sage should also conquer the material mode of goodness by indifference towards the modes, thus specifying within his mind the spirit soul freed from the mode of nature, giving up the very cause of his conditioned life, and attain me. So here Krishna says, by attachment to the loving service of Lord Krishna, which is completely transcendental, one can easily give up one's interest in the mode of nature. There is nothing more powerful than bhakti yoga. There's nothing more powerful than loving devotional service. In the face of loving devotional service, the three modes of material nature become slackened. It becomes very weak. This bhakti yoga is something that one has got to acquire. It's a taste that one can acquire. That means anybody, anyone from any walk of life is not barred from practicing devotional service. This devotional service has got nothing to do with where you come from, what color your skin is, even what level of intelligence. So long as you can understand and you have faith in the words of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita and in Srimad Bhagavatam, you can practice this devotional service. Text number 36. Freed from the subtle conditioning of the mind and from the mode of nature born of material consciousness, the living entity becomes completely satisfied by experiencing my transcendental form. He no longer searches for enjoyment in the external energy, nor does he contemplate or remember such enjoyment within himself. So this human form of life is a rare, very rare opportunity for achieving spiritual liberation. That also you can only achieve spiritual liberation in Krishna consciousness only, in Bhakti Yoga. Lord Krishna has elaborately described in this chapter the characteristics of the three modes of nature and the transcendental situation of Krishna consciousness. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has ordered us to take shelter of the holy name of Lord Krishna, by which process we can easily transcend the mode of nature and begin our real life of loving devotional service to Lord Krishna. So, with the end of this verse, I'd like to share with you something very interesting that I have heard from Skanda Purana from Lord Muruga. Lord Muruga says that the one who takes to the name of chanting of name of Krishna, for him, his liberation has already started, even though he chants with faith or with contempt. So this is a very, very encouraging verse from Lord Muruga. Since today is the Thaipusam day and today is a celebration of Lord Muruga, so I encourage everybody to take to Krishna consciousness very, very seriously. Hare Krishna, thank you very much.